I can say this. My childhood was a happy childhood, and I had quite a privileged upbringing. We lived at Barnaby in a 4-bedroomed house that my father had built 2 miles outside Dungarvan town. As children, we were sent to local schools. As such, as it was thought that I had learning difficulties, I attended St. Joseph's School in the centre of Dungarvan, which was a school for special needs. For the first couple of years, I have very vague memories of my time at St. Joseph's. Yet, I had a very good teacher there, Mrs. Mary Kern, and certainly one of my memories was during the morning break, as all the children were out playing in the playground. I remember walking around the perimeter of the playground on my own. Another memory, a very distinctive memory I have of St. Joseph's, is of our teacher taking the whole class out from the classroom, and we walked to the back of the school and possibly across to a field, and we prayed for the building of the new school, which years later, I happened to visit one day while I was on holiday and back from London, where I do live now, and we would pray for the new school to be built, and eventually it was built. My other brothers went to Abbeyside National School. They were collected on a daily basis by the bus driven by Mr. Keneally, and this particular bus was driven around the local area, which included Ballinaccorty, collecting other children and bringing them to school in Abbeyside, which is a neighbouring village to Dungarvan. And at the end of the school day, it would bring all the children home again. During the 70s, at the age of around 8, my parents sent me to a private school run by a very lovely couple, Anne and Andrew Bailey, and they had a school at their home, Killinure Castle, Dundrum, County Tipperary. I spent 2 years boarding at Killinure. It was a lovely small-sized school with no more than a dozen or 15 pupils during my time there. I loved it. We did subjects such as French, maths, I presume, English, music, art, during our time off, away from class, we used to do cycle rides and walking. We'd join the hunt during the weekends, during the hunting season. There were visits to the jumping woods in Dundrum. And the Baileys had a pony called Alfie, which they took us riding on. And they also installed a tennis court and a swimming pool. So we, as children, availed of those also. And on a Sunday, between them both, Andrew and Anne took 2 separate groups to church. One group went to the Protestant church, and I was part of the Catholic group to go to Mass. And during my time at Killinure, they awarded stars, both silver and gold stars, throughout the school year for achievements. And at the end of term, we were treated by having so many gold stars. And one of our treats, I remember, and I was taken on, was an evening at dinner at Flarney Castle, which was owned by friends of the Baileys, and we went there that evening, one evening, for a meal, and it was great. The Baileys would also take us to the cinema in Cashel, my mother's hometown. On one occasion, I believe we visited Thurles, and my Uncle Patrick was a dentist practicing in that town. And we would go to Thurles to use the swimming pool. And coincidentally, I met Uncle Patrick on one occasion. After my 2 years at Killinure Castle, I joined a local national school outside Dungarvan, on the far side of Dungarvan to where we live, about 6 miles away from us. And fortunately, my teacher at Glenbeg National School Eileen O'Mahony was her name. She lived up the road from us on Ballon Road, and as such, on a daily basis, Eileen would collect a bunch of children, I being one of the first on the school run, and Eileen would bring us to school. And afterwards, after school, Eileen dropped children home, and I was often the last to be dropped off home, and spent much time in the car when Eileen visited her mother, Mrs. Hughes, in the town of Dungarvan, with her 2 sons, Eileen's 2 sons, who were again at Glenbeg, and their names were Niall and Owen O'Mahony. So when they visited the grandmother, I would be in the car waiting, and occasionally Mrs. Hughes would bring me out a plate of her homemade apple pie with cream, and that kept me going. And then Eileen might even stop off in the town at the shops, and the three children, including myself and Eileen's children, were left to amuse ourselves until she got back to the car. And it was during my time at Glenbeg National School that Eileen O'Mahony introduced me to learning Irish. She was a fluent Irish speaker herself and often spoke Irish to others. Hence, from the time I began learning Irish at Glenbeg, I continued right up to the high school, and it wasn't one of my best subjects. I must have been at Glenbeg for a couple of years, and then in 1978, at the age of 14, I joined the high school, St. Augustine's College in Dungarvan. The main school being outside the town, about a quarter of a mile down the road from Barnawee, my family home. And I spent 6 years at St. Augustine's College, not fully, by the way, because during the 5th year at St. Augustine's, my parents asked me that particular Christmas, the first holiday of the school year in 1983, would I be interested in going to a boarding school in Waterford, Newtown School in Waterford City. On account of severe bullying at St. Augustine's, I opted to take this opportunity to go to Newtown School, where I became a boarder again. It was very good. Socially, I got on very well with the boys and girls. It was a mixed school, whereas St. Augustine's College was a boys-only school in my day. Now, as it happened, with the summer exams in 1983, being in the 5th year at Newtown School, I failed dismally a lot of my exams. As a result, my parents said, well, enough of that. You're coming away from Newtown. That will be a waste of our money if you're not going to achieve better results. And as a result, I was put back in St. Augustine's College, by which time, thank God, I fell in very well with my old classmates. And in the summer of 1984, I did my leaving certificate, and through very hard work at study, I passed my leaving certificate. I was very pleased. It was my mother who encouraged me to go along to college to study art at the Regional Technical College in Waterford, where I joined in the autumn of 1984. That first year was the foundation course in art. I enjoyed that particular year at college. I was in digs, living with Mrs. Noonan at her home at 7 Roanmore Park, a housing estate on the approach to the centre of Waterford City. And it was during my time at college in Waterford that I met what is now one of my best friends, Vincent Walsh. Vincent, coming from the town of Clonmel, County Tipperary, I believe the story goes that my grandfather, Paul I. Power, was Vincent's godfather. And Vincent's father, Vincent Walsh Sr., was a musician, who also had a shop at one time or other in Clonmel. At the end of the foundation year in Waterford, I think I failed my exam in the summer, and I was offered a place at Letterkenny College on the back of having had an interview at the college in Letterkenny itself, whereby they said that my art portfolio was pretty bad, yet I think it was the strength of my interview and the confidence that came across that clinched my place, and they offered me the position to do graphic art. I turned it down on the basis that I felt I didn't have imagination enough to go ahead, and I didn't want to waste any more time with the possibility of failing again. And as my second love next to art was cooking, something I became to love doing from my time at Killinure Castle, my mother suggested to me that I could do a 12-week certificate course at Ballymaloe Cookery School with Dorina Allen in Shanagari, County Cork. I accepted the offer, and from January to March in 1986, I attended the 12-week certificate course with Dorina Allen. It went very well. I passed the test at the end of the course and was awarded the school certificate. Ballymaloe Cookery School at the time was relatively new. It was founded by Dorina Allen in 1983. And subsequently, in 2008, I had a letter from Dorina Allen inviting me to the 25th anniversary of the school in 2008, September 2008, which I accepted and went along to. It was a great occasion. the present day students catered for all the guests of the day with marquees set up in the garden around the school. Thankfully, it was a lovely sunny day, and everyone enjoyed it. The weather, the festivities, the food especially, and the addresses given to Dorina, one of which was by her mother-in-law, Myrtle Allen, who is the owner, with her husband Ivan, of Ballymaloe House Hotel in Shanagari. So that was in 2008. From the 1st of April, in 1986, I went directly from Ballymaloe School to my first job at Cashel House Hotel in Cashel, Connemara, which is owned by the McEverleys, Dermot and Kay McEverley. Dermot McEverley being deceased now. That job went very well. I was there for 6 months before I chose to leave. And certainly, for all the time I spent as a chef, I enjoyed it, the experience that is. And subsequently, I stayed in the west of Ireland, working in other hotels as a chef, they being the Ordelon Hotel in Galway City, Sweeney's Uachtarard House Hotel in Uachtarard, working for the Higginses, at Peacock's restaurant in Mann Cross, and that was it. Shortly after working at Peacock's in the summer of 1987, between one thing and another, I ended up in London, and I took a job, my first job in London being a breakfast chef at the Marlborough Crest Hotel in Bloomsbury Street in central London, and I lived at Hyde Park Mansions, just off the Edgware Road in central London. My street was Transept Street. was there living in Hyde Park Mansions for 6 months, and the summer of 87, I can only say, was splendidly hot, a lovely sunny summer. And London was new to me. I loved it. That central part of London and the surrounding areas of Maida Vale, St John's Wood, Bayswater, Hyde Park, Oxford Street. It was buzzing. A great time of my life.